Hey, today we're going to make dreams come true. We're going to make sonhos. Sonhos means dreams in Portuguese. So it's a very popular dish seen throughout Portugal. And it's a very classic recipe. It's actually what they call a patishu recipe, a recipe that's been around since the 1600s. Patishu is actually attributed to Catherine Medici's pastry chef, Coppinelli, from the 16th century. And it's made, you make it for this dessert, the sonhos. The French use it for eclairs or cream puffs. Also in Spain and Mexico, you'll see this same exact dough used for churros. So it's a very versatile dough. What separates patishu from most other doughs is that there's no yeast, there's no baking soda. What you're using to raise it or the leavening is steam. So it's the pressure from the water and the dough. Also really unique to this dough, the flour is cooked before you even deep fry it. First, you're cooking the paste and gelatinizing all the starch. And what that does is it helps retain a lot of water because again, water is what's going to create the steam to make these puff up. Throughout Portugal, you will see this dessert. Often it's at the end, it's tossed with either granulated sugar or cinnamon sugar. Another version you'll see on Madeira Island. The Madeira and the Azores have a tremendous history of growing sugarcane, and for years they've made famous desserts with molasses or mel de cana, which means honey from cane. So in Madeira, they'll use this mel de cana, which is kind of similar to a molasses, and they'll drizzle it over the sonhos, especially around Christmas time. They'll also sometimes drizzle it over the famous molassadas. Mel de cana, at least in the United States, pure cane syrup is slightly different than molasses. The process of making cane syrup is first, they'll get the sugar cane, they'll extract it through machines, squeeze out the sugar cane juice, and then to make mel de cana, they'll basically put them in pots and evaporate the water. So you just get a higher concentration of sugar and also the flavoring agents. This is a more mild molasses taste. And to make molasses, I believe in Portugal they call it molasso. It's actually a slightly different process. They're doing that same thing where they're milling the sugar cane, they're getting out the juice, they're reducing the sugar cane juice by letting the water evaporate out. But then they put it through centrifuges to pull out the sugar crystals. And when they do that, the byproduct of that is molasses. Now, if you visit Madeira Island, you still could see operating sugar mills. There's a famous one in Caleta, which is in the middle southern side of the island. Beautiful area and cool place to visit. They make their own rum there, and it's a beautiful beach area in Madeira too. And you could see the whole process if it's the right time of year if you go to Caleta. Okay, to begin with, I'm going to add the butter, about 5 tablespoons of butter, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 3/4 of a cup of water, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then some zest of lemon. Cut out a few big pieces, that way you could pull them out once this water gets to a simmer. Now let this come up to a simmer. Now I'm going to pull out the lemon zest. Okay, the next step that's very important is we're going to cook the flour. Again, this causes gelatinization of the starch. It allows the starch to hold a lot of water. So you just dump it in all at once, but keep on stirring. You're going to stir for about 1 minute to 2 minutes. Or if you have a digital thermometer, you could put it in the middle of the dough. It should be about 170 to 175 degrees Fahrenheit. So again, it's about 1 to 2 minutes. It should pull away from the sides. And a lot of times there's a film on the bottom of the pan. That's another sign it's done. Or you could put a thermometer in there. It is at 170, so it's done. And the reason why you could use a digital thermometer because gelatinization happens around that temperature. But that is it. So we'll pull that off. The next step is to add in the eggs, but we can't put the eggs in right now because this is really hot. Eggs cook about 150 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you put these in now, this was at 170, you're going to start cooking your eggs. So I would say let it rest for 5 to 10 minutes. And then you can start adding your eggs one at a time. Again, if you have a thermometer, it's helpful because if you put your thermometer and if it's below 140 degrees Fahrenheit, then you know it's safe to start incorporating your eggs. Now, this is sort of a tricky part of the recipe, especially if you don't have a mixer. I think I'm going to be lazy today and use the mixer. But you only could do 1 egg at a time because it takes a while to incorporate that egg into this flour. If I let this cool off and I did 1 egg at a time, and usually I like to crack my eggs into a ramekin first, just to be sure like no shells are going to go in here. That way I don't have to worry about mixing it into my dough and having a hard time getting it out. You could do it by hand, but it does take quite a bit longer, and it'll feel like it's not coming together. It'll get like separated, like the egg does not want to go into the dough, but you just have to keep on stirring it. And you do one at a time until the egg is fully incorporated. Then you start with your next egg. Okay, I'll start my mixer at low speed. Add in the first egg. And I don't know if you could see that well, but it almost breaks it apart into small pieces and kind of looks messy. And again, if you're doing this by hand, it'll take a while for that egg to incorporate, but just keep on letting it go. Add my second egg. And again, as soon as you add that second egg, it almost looks like, I don't know, scrambled something, but it'll just scramble and look kind of terrible again, but it will come back together. You can see after the second egg, that already looks much better, like, you know, looking like a paste. Put in our third egg. Now add the fourth egg. Up to this point, you could make the batter and keep it in your refrigerator for up to about 4 hours. Nothing beats having a good digital thermometer. I highly recommend it. I mean, you can, you know, put a tiny piece of dough in there and it should start sizzling right away, but it helps to be somewhat precise. You know, it doesn't have to be exact. It could be between 350 and like 365, but you want it to be at that temperature because if it's too hot, it's going to brown too quickly before the interior cooks. And if it's not hot enough, it soaks up a lot of oil. It takes longer to cook and it soaks up too much oil. Now it's at 360, so it's probably better for it to be slightly above 350 because the oil temperature is going to drop as soon as you start frying. So there's a couple ways to go about this. One traditional method is just to put a little bit on a spoon and drop it right in there. Another pretty easy technique is just getting a little bit in an ice cream scooper and just plopping it right in there. I think this method goes much faster. Probably about half the size of a golf ball is what I like to do. You don't want to overcrowd it too much. It's still looking good. It's still maintaining close to 350 degrees. They are expanding in front of my eyes. They just keep on getting bigger. It's that pressure from all the steam. And then before you add another batch of your batter, you want to make sure that oil comes back up to about 360 degrees. You want to cook them for about 7 to 9 minutes, somewhere in there. Now I'll remove these from the hot oil into this cookie sheet pan. It has a little bit of paper on it to drain off the excess oil. Put in a little sugar in a bowl, then just toss the donuts with sugar. Some other delicious desserts you could make with mel de cana or molasses are the famous boule de mel. It's probably Madeira's most famous cake. And then also the broche de mel are just delicious. And now for the Sonhos made Madeira style with a little mel de cana. Just get a little syrup, drizzle it on however you think works best for you. Oh, it looks so good. Doesn't that look delicious? That's tradition there. Can't go wrong with the mel de cana or tossed and granulated sugar. They smell fantastic. I hope you enjoyed this video. Now go cook for someone you love.